Level up your success with the ICABA World Network, where accomplished Black professionals and entrepreneurs have created a thriving global ecosystem built from valuable connections and impactful collaborations. Be a part of a trusted network that uplifts, inspires, and enhances your success. Join like-minded and leading Black professionals to foster meaningful relationships, unlock opportunities, and access the resources you need to thrive in your career, business, and life. Go to ICABAWorldNetwork.com and join today.
So welcome to the ICABA Entrepreneur Jumpstart. Today, expanding your network to build your net worth. And one of the things that we have to be mindful of, as I said earlier, you really do need to be intentional. You need to be objective. I mean, have objectives and goals. You see some of the pictures here from ICABA events. One of the things that organizations do when executives are going to different events, whether it's maybe a business meeting, a conference, a social gathering, gala, dinner, awards recognition, or something like that, when major executives are going, they're staffed. And many times, their staff will do research and determine who is going to be there tonight and who's going to be there that we particularly may want to meet, or that we definitely want to make sure that we get a chance to say hello and begin to build a relationship with. We need to be the same way, even though you may not be staffed and you don't have a team that's doing research for you. But first thing is, we should always know what are our strategic objectives, who are the kind of people that we want to meet, what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And your ability to build a relationship is always going to be about the value that you bring to the table. It should always be focused on knowing that if I can build as many relationships as I can build and be of value to somebody, that's going to be the opportunity for me to be able to have someone to reciprocate and return value back to me. If you go into it thinking about how do I build these relationships in order for me to get something versus give something, I think you're going to find you're going to come up short, many a times with that, because the reality is everybody is always looking for something to get, but very few people are looking for something to give. And one of the first things that you want to do is to stand out. So what is your objective as it relates to building relationships? Are you building the relationships in order to be transactional, or are you building the relationships in order to be long-term and productive and value-rich relationships? And I suggest that I'm sure that you want those relationships that you're going after to be the latter. So being intentional about those relationships. When you meet someone and you're determined to find ways to understand who they are and build the value with them, then as you have done some research and you've identified kind of targets of who you're looking for, if you're in the business where you're going to talk to purchasing agents as an entrepreneur, or you do a lot of business with folks in the HR field, well, if you know that's the case, then you should really do research about the HR industry and understand, what are their, hot buttons, what are their pain points, what do they do, what's the kinds of things that are happening in that industry now. Why do you do that? Well, that's because that you meet somebody in the HR industry that may be a targeted industry for you to grow your business. When you're meeting somebody in that space, now you'll have something to talk about. You'll come across as being somebody who's informed. You'll come across as somebody who is aware, and you can add value to that person and have a conversation with them that meets them where they are. All too often, when we meet people and you have that network, and here's my card approach, let me tell you who I am and what I do, we want people to come into our world and meet us where we are. But if you really want to be seen as somebody that people want to have a relationship with, they want to follow up with you, you really want to be that person that people really look at and say, hey, this person, I liked them, because likability is a major function in that. And people tend to like those folks who they think have shown interest in them. And so if you've done some research and knowing the kind of, targets that you're looking for and building relationships based on industry, based on job classification and other kind of things, when you meet those people, you'll be better prepared in order to build those relationships. Rapport. I mean, whether we talk about the 6 degrees of separation that sometimes happens when we meet people, and you start sharing either where you went to school, what you do, where you live, you got kids, somewhere along the line, the more that you can build rapport, with that individual based on a number of human, if you will, qualities. We got to get past, if you will, just the business aspect of who that person is, because all of us are humans. So we want to tap into our humanity and be able to have the ability to build that rapport. And I know I've had people say to me, well, Hutch, when I meet people, I'm not good at small talk. I don't know how sometimes to start a conversation out, so on. There are several different strategies and tactics that we can all deploy when it comes to doing those kind of things. I mean, one of the first things that you can do is, something that, I read about that I started using that's actually, kind of interesting in terms of a way to do that. And that is, like, how do you start the conversation? Well, easily, one of the first things you do is, as you ask who they are, do you live in the area? And every question that you ask is going to lead you down a pathway of being able to get to the next question that really gets them to talking. So your first questions, 2 or 3, may be yes, no, maybe, but you're going to take your way to a path to where you're going to get them talking. So you may figure out that the job is something that is really of interest to them and they like to talk about the job. It may be their family that they like to talk about. It may be a hobby that they have. It may be experience that they just had. So, we always are able to kind of get that individual talking by probing various different, what I would definitely call, that we talk about a lot of times, hot buttons, and figure out which one is really the one that gets them going. I want to share with you, there is and I got to move my slide forward to a woman on named Carla Harris. Carla Harris is one of the major principals with Morgan and Stanley, and she is one of the probably leading executives, not only at Morgan Stanley, but in the financial services industry as a whole, and just has been recognized. And she recently was actually just here last week, and unfortunately, I got invited to meet with her, but I wasn't able to attend. But there's a piece that she talks about on building authenticity, trust, and building relationships, and I think this will be really kind of worthwhile. So let me go ahead and play it.
As you've heard, I am a singer. I've done 5 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall, 1 sold-out concert at the Apollo, recorded 3 gospel CDs, and I'm in the studio right now recording my 4th. But when I first started in this business, thank you. When I first started in this business of financial services and investment banking, I didn't want anybody to talk about the fact that I was a singer. I wanted to be known as a no-nonsense, hard-driving, analytical, quantitative investment banker. I'm not here to sing and dance, boys. Let's not get it twisted. I didn't want anybody to talk about that until I saw the client reaction. Against my objections, my colleagues would take me into the room and say, oh, this is Carla Harris, our capital markets banker. But what you really ought to know about Carla, she's an amazing gospel singer, and she sung at the Apollo and Radio City and Carnegie Hall, and I'm there rolling my eyes until I saw the client reaction. Oh, you're a singer. I so admire people who can sing. And I personally love to sing, but my family will only let me sing in the shower. And maybe you could talk to my daughter about how she integrates her love of the arts in her academics. And there we were, having a 15-minute meeting before the meeting. Are you with me, Nordic Business Forum? The meeting. before the meeting. So when I sat down to pitch, they heard me with a different ear. They saw me through a different lens because Carla Harris, the singer, was allowed to be in the room with Carla Harris, the banker. So I naturally differentiated myself from the other 5 bankers that would come in there and pitch that same IPO that afternoon. So now, whenever I go into a new situation, I bring Carla Harris, the investment banker. I bring Carla Harris, the prayer warrior. Carla Harris, the investment manager. Carla Harris, the singer. Carla Harris, the writer. Carla Harris, the mother. Carla Harris, the speaker. Carla Harris, the golfer. Carla Harris, the football fan. I bring all those Carlas to the table. Because frankly, I don't know which Carla will be the one that will connect and allow me to own the relationship in a proprietary way. Ladies and gentlemen, your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage, and it is at the heart of powerful, impactful, influential leadership. It is imperative that you bring your authentic self to the table, because when you bring your authentic self to the table as a leader, you motivate and inspire others to bring their authentic selves to the table. And anytime any of us is in an environment where you can be who you really are, we always outperform. And that will now accrue to your status in that leadership seat. The next thing that you must be intentional about is building trust. I would submit to you that we are all competing in an environment where innovation is the dominant competitive parameter. And if innovation is the dominant competitive parameter, then by definition, you will go into territories unknown. And if you are going into territories unknown as a leader, you also know that you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. You will need other people's intellect, experience, and their relationships in order to successfully prosecute any endeavor. So it is imperative that you are intentional about building trust with your team. If your team trusts you, then they will follow you into territories unknown. And they will follow you simply because it is you who is leading. And at the end of the day, you cannot lead if other people will not follow. So in order to make that happen, you must build trust. Now, the question is, how do you build trust? You simply deliver over and over and over again. I want you to think right now to the people in your lives that you trust. Maybe who comes to mind is the person that's taking care of your kids right now. Maybe it's that one salon that you go to every single week and only that one stylist can cut your hair. Maybe it is the restaurant that is your go-to restaurant because they always have great service and they are impeccable with the food. But think about why you trust them. Over and over and over, they have delivered. And when you are trying to build trust with your team, you must engage enough with your team so that you understand what they value. And when you understand to the person what they value, then you can set yourself up to deliver over and over again. Whenever I'm trying to build a relationship with a client, I try to think of 4 things that I can do before I ever ask for anything. And in order to do that, you have to listen because people will tell you what they value if you listen to them. So maybe the person is telling me that they're an avid runner. So I think to myself, hey, maybe I should talk to them about this running coach. And then I say to them, do you have a personal running coach? I understand if you have a personal coach, it can increase your time. Oh, by the way, Nike's coming out with a new shoe. Maybe I can connect you with my friend at Nike who can give you a prototype of that shoe. There is currency and connections. Then I say, hey, do you have a good orthopedist on your team? Having a good orthopedist and having them at your beck and call is something that's important. Oh, I have friends who are going to do this great marathon over in Berlin. Can I connect you with them so you'll have a community when you get over there? I try to think of 4 things that I can do before I ever ask. And by the time I ask for the business, the person is now thinking, wow, I wasn't thinking about giving her firm any of this business, but Carla has done A, she's done B, she's done C, she's done D. Maybe I can give Morgan Stanley a little bit of that business. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all I'm looking for is a little bit of an opening. And I can wiggle my hips through the rest of that. And then I can land and expand. As you've heard,
So I think there was a couple of really good takeaways from what Carla just shared with us. One of them was, as we talked a minute ago, as I shared about talking about authenticity. So her authenticity allowed her to be able to open up doors and create areas of conversation and connections with people based upon the various things that she is and that she does. Well, that is preceded by something that, if you're in sales, you're familiar with what we call the ABCs of sales. Anybody know what that is, the ABC of sales? I know there's a couple of salespeople out here. What is it?
Always be closing.
So in the area of building relationships, I call it the ABL of relationship building. What's that? Anybody know what the ABL is? Always be listening. If you are listening, and as Carla was saying, people will tell you if you ask who they are, what their interests are, what they enjoy. I mean, you having a conversation, you just meet somebody and you can say, hey, you know what? I've been thinking about going on vacation. Have you been on any good trips lately, or a trip that you went on that was really great? Everybody's been on a great trip at this particular point in their life. And usually if you've been on a great trip, you love sharing it. I've got to take, my wife out for a special dinner. Can you recommend a restaurant? Once you begin to open up those doors and begin to build that rapport and that relationship and get that person talking and sharing and exchanging with you, that rapport starts building. Then as you're listening, inevitably, they're going to say something that's going to give you a clue as to who they are. And that's going to give you that opening to go in and figure out, what can I do for you that I know will build, if you will, our relationship stronger and create a value proposition where you see me as somebody that you want to have a relationship with. Because anybody who wants to have a relationship with you is much easier to have a relationship with for the things that you're trying to accomplish. And so, as what Carla was saying, you listen for a number of different things that are going to come out of those opportunities will really create a real value-rich environment for you to build that relationship and to be authentic. And now what's the real key is follow up. All too often when it comes to relationship building, we meet people, and when you meet people, today's world, whether it's using your organizer, your calendar, your mobile device, you've got so many different devices and tools and apps to help you to keep up with people. It's really criminal for people not to follow up. Okay. There is a guy, and I'm just sitting here thinking about his name was his last name is McKay. I'm trying to remember his first name. But one of the top motivational speakers, he's on a level with your Brian Tracy's and your Tim or Robbins guy. And I read his book maybe 30 years ago. And he has this thing he called the McKay 66. Okay. And what that is that all of his salespeople, whenever they meet somebody, they had a form at that time, and they had to learn 66 things about everybody on their account. Things, their birthday, where they went to school, how many kids they have, anniversary dates, are they married? You can kind of get the picture and go on and on and on. But here was what was interesting. The reason why he really pursued that was because he was in a very commodity-driven business. He was in the envelope manufacturing business. Now, if you can imagine how tough it is to differentiate your product when you're in the envelope manufacturing business, okay? I mean, oh, my envelope, you got to see my envelope. That is a really tough sell. I mean, we've all had that sales experience where somebody said, okay, now sell me this pen. You're like, okay, well, sell me this envelope. So there was usually the competition was always selling based on price. Well, we know that if you sell based on price, then you are losing based on profitability. So he had to figure out a way to create value. So he drove the value in the relationship. And he knew that the more that he knew about the clients, the more he able to do. So I remember once using him in the K66. And one of the things I found out when I was in Houston years ago, that there was a woman who had been from Louisville. There was a barbecue place in Louisville that she went to that she just thought was, the best barbecue she'd ever had in life. So when I got back to the office that day, I called and ordered some barbecue from that place and had it delivered to, the woman I just met. And I can't even begin to tell you how much business and the relationship that came as a result of doing that. But it was that McKay 66 mentality that really drove me there to try to figure out what is it that I can learn about the people that I'm doing business with, then creates an opportunity for me to deliver something to them that will be of value. So I'm going to go back to Carla Harris for one last thing as it relates to talking about how we build trust. And then I'm going to wrap up and turn it over to Mr. Reese.
Most people don't follow up and follow. Most people don't follow up and follow through. When you do, you differentiate yourself. How do you make long-term relationships in your network? Now, people say to me all the time, oh my gosh, networking is so difficult. Oh, networking feels so inauthentic. Oh, how do you keep up with all the relationships? There are a few key things that you can do to make sure that the people that you meet, that it turns from just a general meeting to a real relationship, to a long-term meaningful relationship. And here's what you do. You do need a level of organization. So if you're like me and you're meeting a lot of people, you need to be able to keep a notebook or something in your phone or even a spreadsheet of all the people that you've met. And I'm pretty anal. I'll do it on that day. I met Audrey or I met Mike. Today is December, blah, blah, blah. Follow up. The two most important things you can do with respect to your network is to follow up and follow through. Most people ask me, how do you meet all these people and how do you follow up? And it's not that difficult because interestingly enough, most people don't follow up and follow through. So when you do, you differentiate yourself. If I meet somebody at one of my speeches and they give me the card and I don't have a card on me, I said, I will follow through. Don't worry, I'll make sure I send you my information. And of course, they give me that look like, sure you will. Well, I make it a practice on my way from the event to the airport. I line all those cards up that I've received and I send an email. Hi, Audrey, it was great to meet you at the conference. As promised, here is my information. Hi, Mark. I send the same email. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Stacy. Now, the person, when they receive the email, is thinking, wow, she did follow up. Well, that changes their view of me right there. Why? Because most people don't follow up and follow through. When you do, you differentiate yourself. Now, I learned this tip from one of my former partners. He would put key relationships on a calendar. So if it's December 16th, his calendar alarm would go off and say, send a note to Steve, Stacey, Sam, and Jamie. And if it's January 7th, send a note to Michael, Mary, and Martha. He was that methodical about it. But it only takes a few minutes. Hi, Martha. Can't believe that we're in the first quarter of 2024. Hope you had a great holiday season. Look forward to connecting at that conference in June. And again, you spend 15 or 30 minutes and you can get through 10 or 15 quick emails and you've connected. It takes light touches to invest in and to fertilize your network. And maybe the person does not send you a return email, doesn't matter. You have certainly connected intellectually with them. So 3 quarters later, when you need to call them about something, you will be top of mind simply because you sent a couple of emails over the course of the year. You can set up your schedule to send an email in the first quarter, an email at the end of the second quarter, an email talking about the summer, and a quick email talking about the fourth quarter of the year. And you can do that every year. But being methodical about that and spending those 30 minutes at a time to connect allows you to keep your network fertile. So when you need to call somebody for something, they're more apt to answer your call or answer your email. This has been a tool that's been very useful to me. But you have to be intentional about it and you have to be organized. Because if you're like me, you feel like time is going so fast and you look up and an entire year is gone. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about your network is to use it. What's the point of having relationships if you don't activate those relationships around something? And more importantly, put yourself in a position to be used by somebody in your network. You'll be surprised how fast your network, whether it's that person or somebody else, will reciprocate around your particular needs. Networking is fun. It's valuable. Your relationships are critical to your career success, internally and externally. Go get them. Most people.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to add here in terms of what she said, there's a time when we need something that we get busy trying to, either find a relationship, build a relationship, create a relationship. But the time to have those relationships built, cultivated, developed, and firmly in place is when you don't need them. So that means that you need to really be about doing that today, tomorrow, and every day. And begin being intentional, being organized, following up. Those are the things that differentiate you, and pay attention. ABL, always be listening. The world will tell you what you need to know. The question is, are you listening? And if you're listening, are you acting on it and you're following up? Those people who listen, show authenticity in who they are, share with people, follow up, are people that you trust. And if you have a trusted relationship with somebody, it'll take you a long way. So best of luck, build those relationships. And as you create that bigger network, you're going to find those relationships are going to turn into opportunities that are going to help you to generate greater income, to build wealth, and to grow your business. And that's why we say, expand your network, grow your net worth. Thank you. Any questions? All right, David, we're going to turn over to you, my friend.
That ain't right, man. You give me after that charming young lady, Carla Harris. Come on, man. Why don't you let me go after a Baptist preacher? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you and everybody for joining. My whole program or my thought process here has already been covered. A lot of what has been said, but I want to try to take it at a different mindset, and that's social media. A lot of people are afraid of social media today in the fact that they feel business information is all up on social media. And how do you utilize that? So we talk about networking and we talk about network. I mean, if you go back 10 years.
Can't hear you, David.
Oh, okay. Can't hear me? Let me try. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. My mic was down. I apologize. Thank you, Sherry. So strategically, you have to be intentional. You can do all the nice things, follow up, follow through. But the thing that I find to be very, very successful is using social media. And I use LinkedIn as that platform because LinkedIn twice a year will make sure that they notify me when you have an anniversary or when it's your birthday. And my strategy behind that is I'm not looking to connect with you at that point for a conversation. I'm just looking to make sure that you're doing okay. How's your family? Things of that magnitude. God bless you, sir. And try to make sure that we make it a win-win, because the worst time to call on your network is when you need it and you haven't fertilized it or you haven't grown it. You never want to be that person that every time they call you, they say, uh-oh, what does that person want or what does that person need? So you need to make sure that you are in that not only forefront, but you're taking the time to build that rapport and taking that information. Everybody I talk to and being in sales, nobody wants to be sold to. If you show me anybody who wants to be sold to, I'll take you to the used car dealership. These people, that's their mindset, transactional versus reactional. You want to take the time to learn. And it's fun. Networking, it's challenging for those people who don't want it to work. And that's why it's called network. You got to do something to grow the network. But be assured, if you do it right, your relationships are priceless. Hutch can talk about me and him. I mean, I've known Hutch for umpteen years. Hutch calls on me. Hey, I'm here for him. Why? We took the time to build a relationship. So it's a long term. I think I've known Hutch for close to over 20 years now. So that's the kind of relationship that when you can call on, and other people that have been on with me understand that it's, we're here to help each other to grow. And if you're weak in something, I think Hutch talked about one of the situations where people may be shy. I always try to develop what I call a wing person. So when I go to an event, I try to bring somebody that I know that might know the audience or have a comfort zone with the people around me. I know, for example, a lot of the chambers, they have ambassadors that kind of support and find people that you are interested in meeting with. So that's just other venues that you can take advantage of to grow that network and making it stronger. But don't underestimate the power of face to face. That is one of the best things. I mean, during the pandemic, I was fortunate to help nonprofits raise over $650,000 because we did virtual fundraising, virtual events. And that led me to the podcast because people heard about what we did and wanted to be a part of that. So that's kind of what you try to do. You want to build a want, build a need. And then once you have a want and a need, people will be hungry to try to get more information. You get back engaged, you get engaged back into the situation. Look, networking is fun. It can be challenging, but the best thing I love about networking, it's fun. It's good to meet good people. It's good to learn about good people. And then how do you help them? I think Hutch made a good point when he said earlier that don't look at what you can get, but look at what you can give. Give of yourself, give up your time, making those efforts to make sure you are that person that they call on. We all have good friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. But the most important thing is your relationship with your significant other. I'll get spiritual and say my relationship with the Lord. The point of the matter is you go in with an open mind and don't look at what the situation is calling for, but look at what you can do to be different. We talk about follow up and follow through. That is critical. If you're not following up, then everybody's card you get is just a waste. And people are going to call on you and say, hey, didn't you remember that guy that you gave such and such with? You don't remember. So one of the things people tease me about my bow tie is my distinguished mark. I wear my bow ties at a lot of events. Why? Because I want to be known as the guy with the bow tie. For years, being one of the few African-American men in certain environments, everybody say, hey, you remember that black guy that was blah, 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 blah. I got tired of hearing the black guy. So I said, now you got a bow tie. So now you remember the guy with the bow tie. Everybody, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you separate yourself. What makes you different? And that's the thing. Remember the leader or people like to find themselves at that certain plateau that makes a difference, that makes them feel good, that makes them know who they are. And when you think about it, how many times have you been at a networking event and you felt that you didn't get anything out of it? Don't have to raise your hand. Just think about it. What could you have done different? What could you have done better? And even in my podcast, if you listen to any of my shows, all my questions are open-ended. I want you to talk. My listeners want to know about you. They don't care about what you're selling or what you're involved in. They want to know who you are. I can tell you in less than 5 minutes, if you tell me who you are, I'll know what you do because you're going to tell me. As Hutch made it clear, always be listening. I like that AVL, Hutch. I didn't have that one. So I'll add that to my list of networking tools to have because I think it's important that you understand that. And there's a difference in networking. Men network different than women. And people keep telling me, well, what's the difference? No. When you're looking at a situation, if you're a woman going out networking and you're by yourself, you better have it together because guess what? The guys are going to think of you differently than you would if you have your partners with you. And some people are afraid to network and they see that. It's almost like putting and not no pun intended, putting a sheep in wolf's clothing because the people know and feel your scaredness or energy. That's why I always tell people to bring somebody with them if they don't feel comfortable in an environment. Always take notes, put it on the back of the card. There's networking tricks, I like to call it. When I meet somebody that I really want, I don't give out my card. You have to earn my card. And now with the digital card, it's even a lot more easier. When people say, well, David, do you have a card? I may have some cards, but hey, let's do my digital card. It shows me, one, that I'm on top of my technology. It gives you an opportunity to get involved with technology, and you'd be surprised how quick the relationship grows. Because, oh, I didn't know you can do that. I didn't know you can get your QR code. So understanding a different talking piece that you can use to help make yourself different and create that differentiation. If you're selling products, if you're trying to grow that from that end, you need to understand the market that you're working with and trying to make the best of. So I'm going to, I don't know how much time, I know I have 15 minutes. And if I talk for 15 minutes that fast, that's my New York coming out. So I wanted to just make sure that I give some space for people that may have questions, because again, the power of the network is the value of the network.
That was really great, David. I want to ask a question of you, David. And so in your, career lifespan, if you will, has there ever been a situation that you can think of that really stands out where you met somebody and the relationship, developed over time, and almost, if you will, like out of the blue, that person who you built a relationship with, where nothing was really going on besides the relationship, all of a sudden became a go-to opportunity for you?
Yes, it has. The question is, how many do you want me to tell you? Because it happens so often, Hutch. You look. I look at you, Hutch. When we first met, you was doing one thing completely different. We go off in our different directions. We still stay in South Florida. You come back, and now, bam, the relationship is at a different level. You've grown your business. I've been fortunate enough to come along with the ride, but that's the kind of things that you don't expect that happen. And, when I break it down and I look back and I say, wow, I never would have expected that, or I wouldn't have expected this. It's just funny. A guy just yesterday, I was trying to remember what this guy was doing. He used to call me every other day to milk my brain to get information. He wasn't a network. He was just trying to get a job. And this guy just kept calling, and then he stopped. And then when I finally got back to him and I called him, I said, where have you been? He said, Dave, I've been working like crazy. I'm feeling like I'm a Hebrew slave. They're killing me. They're working me to death. And so I said, okay, let's get back to building the relationship. So sometimes relationships can fall off, but guess what? When things happen, changes, it brings you back to recuperate, to rebuild, whether it was a good relationship or even a bad relationship. He's telling me he's having problems with the people on his job. I told him, look, you need to get a mediator in there and try to figure out what this is, because it's going to mess with you if you don't. So again, Hutch, you're right. It's dead on from that standpoint, that you have to look at the situation and try to groom it and grow it whenever you can.
Gotcha. Does anybody have anything that you want to ask?
Ricardo, looks like he has something to say.
Yep. Go ahead, Ricardo.
Uh-oh. Mira, we can't hear you. Escuche. Uh-oh. No.
We don't hear you yet. Look, I've seen something I've never seen before. I'm seeing like this little pen next to you. Well, I don't know if it's because I put you on spotlight, but that's what that is. I put you on
Okay.
spotlight.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
There
we
we
can.
Oh,
There we go.
wow. Okay, I'm gonna take my speaker away from me. Okay, listen, thanks. This is really, really, really powerful. I've always said that quiet people have the loudest minds. And in the past, I've made the mistake of not being patient enough to extract from the quiet ones. And I felt that I missed out, just from innovation and things like that. And I know that those people don't necessarily say very much in social gatherings. How do you approach, what's your approach to sort of get the best out of it from quiet folks?
So let me let you in on a secret.
Uh-huh.
I am an introvert. I grew up.
No.
Yes, 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 yes. And this is the
Oh
same reaction I got. I grew up in New York City, raised by a single mom and only child. So I had no brothers, no sisters. I didn't even know what a mentor was, half less a coach outside of my football or basketball coach. So being that shy person, people would, I wouldn't even go to people because I was afraid of rejection. Don't tell me no, so I was scared of that. And what changed me, believe it or not, Ricardo, was when I became a college radio station DJ. I got into engineering, electrical, again, being I grew up in that time where affirmative action was big. Just to show you how naive I was, I grew up in New York City. So when they told me engineering, I'm thinking train engineer. I wanted to drive the trains. It's always been a drive of mine. And even to this day, my kids will tell you I have a train room, a little N-gauge scale train room. It drove them crazy because of my 4-bedroom house. One of those bedrooms was dedicated to my trains. It was simple as that. But the long story of this is the fact that I didn't have any development. My family didn't understand this whole structure, being an only child. And so when I went to college, I'm asking questions about, well, so when do I drive the trains? And my instructor said, no, David, you're not driving them. You're going to be making them. I looked at him with that look like I didn't sign up for that. I wanted to drive the trains. So once I got out of the mindset of being an engineer, I don't know if you remember Family Matters.
yes,
You remember the show? You
yes,
remember Urkel? You remember Urkel?
yes.
That's me, baby.
Oh,
During the day, I'm the Urkel. Did I do that? Did I do that? And then at night, I'm very suave. I had a whole different demeanor. Everything changed and it lit up the environment. And how I learned how to do that was because of the background of knowing that behind the air, I had this voice, or the radio was taking over versus taking me in. So I learned how to utilize those skill sets to help others get engaged.
Basic orientation knocked out. I didn't know.
All right. Somebody needs to probably mute. Let's
Or I
see.
can possibly have something available on Monday afternoon.
Sherry.
It's the other
Uh,
Sherry.
Hey, let me take a shot too at what you were asking, Ricardo,
Yeah,
about the quiet person.
How do you approach those people? How do you extract, and especially in
Yeah.
gatherings, which is very
Well,
difficult for them?
I think one of the first things that you said, is the fact that you have to understand that just because somebody's quiet doesn't mean that they're not thinking and that they don't have, something going on. And I'm going to share a quick story. I
Yeah.
used one of my best friends, we were roommates in college, and we got our first apartment together. And we got up one Saturday morning and went out to a bunch of yard sales in order to get furniture for our apartment because we're college students, we didn't have much money, so we run out to these yard sales and we're getting stuff. And so at the end of the day, we've been to probably 10 yard sales at this point. This is the last one. We're headed back. And now I'm a lot more of an extrovert than my friend Greg is, and I go in, I start, negotiating, cutting the deal. Greg sees something he really likes, and the woman's talking to him, trying to sell it to him, and he's just standing there smiling like Greg just does, and so I'm thinking like, man, just tell her you'll give her $10 for this thing so we can get out of here, and but I'm thinking it to myself, and but then I just, and I started watching, and I realized that before it was all done, the woman ended up giving it to Greg, and the reason. What I learned from that was that it may, it's not that it doesn't work because, you're in negotiating, being assertive and all that kind of stuff, but it taught me that a quiet approach can be just as effective, if you will, as someone who's being a lot more aggressive about it. So what that also did for me was made me realize that whenever I'm in a room of people and somebody is being quiet, I tend to either, if it's a situation where it makes sense to call on them, I'll do that because they're usually the ones that are sitting back, they're listening to everything, they're taking it all in, and they have a lot to say. Or if it makes more sense, I'll sometimes go over afterwards and talk to them and just say, hey, I know she didn't say too much, but what did you think about it? And what blows my mind is when you do that, particularly when it's one-on-one, they tell you everything. I mean, they just almost like a flower just blooms and open up. And you think like, wow, you sat there, but you just begin to realize, we have people who are just different and we bloom in different soil. We bloom under different environments. As we know, some plants bloom, when you put them out in the sun, and that's probably the extrovert. But then you got some plants, you just got to give them a little bit of shade, because they don't like to be out in the sun. But then if you give them the right amount of shade and you give them a little water, they'll bloom. And I think that's what you're asking about in terms of that quiet mind. Give them an opportunity to share. And I think that when you do, they will just open up and it'll be really, beautiful.
That's phenomenal. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Jackie Jimenez has her hand up. So Jackie, go right ahead.
Hey, thank you. So can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so David, you talked about social media, how you use social media. And I want to know if you could share how you use social media as far as like all the pictures you take with every possible person on the planet and how you build relationships and sales that, building that relationship through picture even. And I know it's a strategy. So can you share exactly what it is that you're doing?
Thank you, Jacqueline, for that question. And yes, what I'm doing is people tend to gravitate towards people that know people. And so when I'm at an event, if it's a pop, like I'll take a selfie with Hutch, I'll take a selfie with Ricardo, I'll even take a selfie with you, Jacqueline. People follow you. They know you. They may not follow me, but when they see me with you, they say, okay, Dave is cool because he knows Jacqueline. So my intention here is to help build the awareness. It's somewhat proponent type of thing where I'm looking to build my brand, but no, I'm really looking to expand the brand. And everybody knows David or everybody knows Jacqueline. When I mention your name, Jacqueline, at certain functions, everybody knows you, Jacqueline. Why? Because either they saw me with a picture with you or they know of you from your books and things that you're doing. It just helps me to build my network to make it stronger. And that's my strategy from that standpoint. I'm looking to help grow you as well as myself.
That's
I thought it might also, to Ricardo's question, it might also help that quiet person, feel included. And I didn't know if that was part of it. That's kind of one of the other reasons why I asked.
No, good ask.
Well, Jackie, I think your part about, pulling out that person is quiet and making them feel included is really important. And that was one of the reasons why I was mentioning that, if I'm in a meeting or a group and like you said, and I notice there's someone that hasn't said much and they're sitting back and, you read the room and you can kind of tell that someone may just not be saying anything because they're not really engaged or, they're paying attention. But you can also see where someone just hasn't said anything, but they are engaged and they are paying attention. And they probably have something that they can really add value to because they have been quiet and really paying attention. So I think you're right on both of those regards, and being able to pull them into the room. One, it gives them, I think, a affirmation of their self-worth and value. And it also usually gives some real insight to the other people in the room because they usually have a perspective that hasn't been talked about, and so I think it's really good to do that. Hey, let me ask a question. I want to go on the other side of the spectrum here. We've been talking about a lot of things in terms of how to build relationships and how to make them grow and, and so on and so forth. But there's also a thing that we do that when it comes to these relationships that and when a relationship goes wrong, we sometimes have to figure out how do we get that relationship back on track. So I'll give you one example of a relationship going wrong. How many times have you met somebody that you're trying to do business with or you're trying to close a deal and they go quiet on you? They're not returning your emails. You're not returning your phone calls. Anybody have that experience? Raise your hand. So I want to see if I'm not the only one that has that experience from time to time. All right.
It's called ghosting.
They call it ghosting. Yep, that's the term I've heard, ghosting.
That is the new term for sure. You got ghosted. So when you get ghosted, how can you kind of pull them out? Has anyone ever heard of what I call the go for no strategy?
Heard of it.
Heard of it? Okay,
Yes,
so
I've heard of it, but go
here's,
ahead.
here's what you can try. Okay, and you know it takes a sense of humility in order to pull it off. And what I mean, so let me just give you a perfect example. There's definitely times where we all, for whatever reason, you know, we're just really busy. We're pulled in a lot of different directions, and you don't follow up with somebody as soon as you intended to. And I think most of us may have experienced what I know I have in my career is that generally, almost whenever I think that someone's ignoring me, not following up or giving what I need, when I finally do get with them, I find out they were just busy. They may have left town, something happened, you know, but more times than not, it wasn't that they were just not paying attention. So what I started doing was, you know, trying to get people's attention. So let's just say, for example, if I'm trying to get Dee McCord, you know, and we've got a proposal in front of her, and I'm waiting for her to say, yes, you know, I'm ready to sign and let's go do the deal. But now she's gone quiet. I haven't heard from her in a week. So I send Dee a note. Hey, Dee, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to connect with you, and I hope I didn't do anything to offend you the last time that we talked, because I know you're always good at getting back with me and I haven't heard from you in a while, you know. And I got to tell you guys, I've done that, and I almost sometimes go like 5, 4, 3, and I'll get this email back. No, you didn't do anything if offend me. You didn't hurt my feelings, you know. And I just kind of smile and chuckle, you know, because if the intention is, you know, positive and the relationship is good, if people think that they have done something that is perceived that way, and they don't want to leave it like that, and generally, you know, people of good meaning and good intent and good heart, they'll jump on it and respond right away, you know, via email, text, or call or whatever. And but as I said, there has to be a certain amount of humility that goes with that. And you know, it's not a smart aleck, it's not a sarcastic. You know, you're really taking it on and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, you know, to keep bugging you," or "I'm sorry if I said something that you know you didn't like," or however you put it in your own words. But leave that person with the impression that you feel like that you did something wrong, so that they can rescue you. Okay, that rescue mentality is a very strong human trait, and when you play it right, I guarantee you it's a great way to kind of keep your relationships going when it may seem that you've gotten stuck or you haven't been able to move something you know, forward. One other thing I wanted to mention too, there are no permanent friends or enemies in business. I don't know about you, but there's been some people that I've gone sideways with that have turned out to be, you know, good business partners, friends, or whatever. But had I, because of the transaction, the engagement, the situation, the circumstance of the situation didn't work out well. But if I had taken that and allowed it to be a personal thing, saying, well, the situation didn't work out, they didn't do what I wanted them to do, maybe they didn't even do what they said they were going to do, I don't ever want to talk to them again. You know, well, if you really are serious about, you know, building relationships, you have to give other people an opportunity to fall short and know that, you know, you're going to give them grace, because why? We fall short. And if you want people to give you grace, then you really need to be about someone who's willing to do the same thing, you know. And so one of the things about building these relationships, they don't always go smoothly, they don't always go exactly how you want to. So you also need to be mindful of, how do I handle when the relationship may go sideways or may not go down the pathway exactly how I want it, and have some things in place. And so knowing, one, that there are no permanent friends and enemies, so you don't write people off. I mean, I got to tell you, I've had more than one situation where there was somebody who I thought that I would never, you know, probably do business with or anything going forward. And 2 years later, even 3 or 4 years later, next thing I know, we're doing business. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, I am so glad that I did not write them off. Glad I didn't say anything stupid because I didn't like the way things ended the last time or anything like that. So never, if you will, as they say, blow up, burn a bridge or, blow up a relationship because it doesn't go the way you expect it to go, and know that there's always another chance later on, and keep those opportunities alive. And if somebody's not responding back to you, use that go for no. Let them rescue the relationship because you've let them know that you're sorry, that maybe you did something wrong, you didn't follow up, maybe you didn't call. You know that you called, you emailed them 3 times over the past 2 weeks. That's okay. Your goal isn't about trying to be right. Your goal is about getting it done, okay, and accomplishing your goal and objective. We've got about 5 more minutes before this session, and we'll take a break and we'll go into the going global session. I know we've got a lot of really outstanding business owners, entrepreneurs, professionals here. So we'd love to hear, anybody's experience as it relates to relationship building, what you've learned and that you might share with us.
So Hutch, we talk about the good side of relationship and even when it goes south. How do you recover when it has gone south and now that person has a negative feeling about you and is putting your name out there negatively? How do you try to replenish that if possible? Because once you get that negative, what does it say? 100 versus all of thank goodness it all goes south. So how do you help somebody or at least get yourself back in a good grace without necessarily hurting your ego, as they would say?
Well, I think the first thing you do is, as you said, you got to put your ego aside.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that is most, I think, useful in any relationship is putting that ego aside. I mean, that ego can mess up a whole lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's really important. One of the things that I train salespeople on is how to be humble, which is like an oxymoron, counterintuitive to most salespeople, because most salespeople, they want to win, they want to be right, and it's just kind of a natural thing for them. But generally speaking, when you can put your ego aside and focus on the other person, figuring out, if something went wrong, hey, I'm sorry. The first thing is you got to go direct. So if you got an issue with somebody, put your ego aside, and particularly if it's something that you need to resolve, because either you got to deal with this person, so you can't just let it stay as it is, or whatever the case may be. It's something that you need to fix. You got to go direct. No emails, no text messages. Try to avoid even a phone call, because I can tell you it's much easier to be mad and angry with somebody on the phone than it is when you're in person. Okay. So you want to get in person, first of all, as most as possible. Second piece is, be humble. I mean, what is the point? Is the point being right or getting it right? Okay. If you're trying to salvage a relationship, trying to fix the relationship, going in and trying to prove your point or explain yourself or whatever, usually all that does is sets up for the person to do the same thing with you. They're going to explain themselves. They got to, tell you why they felt like they were right. We've all been there. We've been there with employees. We've been there with colleagues. We've been there with husbands and wives and kids and whatever. It happens all the time. But what happens if you go to somebody who probably has wronged you, and you go in and just say, hey, listen, things have gone wrong. Things have gone sideways. I want to apologize. I'm sorry, and whatever I did, that caused you to feel bad or upset you, please just take my, right now apology and forgive me for it. If you're not dealing with a total narcissist, egomaniac, generally people are going to respond like, oh, no, it really wasn't you. It was me. But it takes somebody to take the first step. And it takes somebody to have enough, if you will, actual strength, not weakness, because it takes strength to be humble. Okay. Humility is not for the weak-minded. Humility is for those who are confident and strong in their own self-worth and self-image. And if you can go do that, that'll begin a conversation. And usually once that first person has, put out the bridge, to cover up the hurt, to give that person a chance to walk across and for you to walk toward them and meet. And then just try to figure out, how do you go forward? Because the longer you stay with whatever happened, you're usually are not going to be going forward, you're going backwards. So establish, the fact that the problem is here. I'm sorry. Let's figure it out. How do we move forward and begin to move that thing forward and let them know that I know this didn't work out. Sorry, didn't feel it. You're a good guy. Let's try to make this work. You're a good woman, whatever it may be. But it's really about going direct, being humble, and moving forward.
Thank you, Hutch.
Hutch, at the same time, after you've done all that, you've humbled yourself, you apologize yourself. There's some people that are just extra sensitive out there. And I believe that society has become quite sensitive. That's just my opinion. But after because I've experienced that with doctors, where you may have said one thing or two that didn't come the right way and you apologize and they're too sensitive. At some point, you just gotta accept it and let go,
You're absolutely right, Carlo.
Because, I believe that if from the heart you haven't really done anything to hurt anybody, and people are not mature enough to be able to accept an apology, you just got to be able to say, hey, this is not the right person for me,
Yeah.
And I know that could be costly sometimes too.
Well, all I can say is, thumbs up. I think you're right. There are times when the situation is not salvageable, because a relationship does take two. And at the end of the day, we can only do what we have the control of, and that's what we say, what we do, and how we show up. And if you've given it all you have, then that's a really sign that this wasn't meant to be, and you just have to move on. Because while I was very clear, and I stand on that about being humble and having the humility going into it. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you put yourself down as a walking mat where people just walk over you. Okay. But, so I think to your point, if they can't respond reasonably, and meet you, and I won't even say halfway, I'll just say meet you. Okay. If they don't try to meet you somewhere along the way of being able to resolve it, then I think you just you have to walk away from it.
Sometimes rejections are God's protection.
I like that. Sometimes rejections are God's protection.
I like that.
Yeah. That was Angelina Buckley, guys. In case you didn't know. Yeah.
That's nice.
I want to leave on one thought, and we're going to take a break, and we've got Desmond and Ricardo coming. So we've got Ricardo coming to us from Zimbabwe and Africa, and then we have Desmond, and going to be talking about how to expand into global markets. What I wanted to say here was organization and follow up. I ask people this question quite regularly when it comes to building relationships and networking. And that is, what is your strategy and your plan on building relationships? And I can tell you probably 9 times out of 10, I get a blank stare. So people say, well, I really don't have like a plan. What do you mean a plan? Well, how do you plan to follow up and cultivate and build the relationships that you are developing and you're engaging in your business? And so as we heard, Carla Harris say, she gets those business cards, and on the way back to the hotel, to the airport, she's making notes and following up. With today's tools, if you're using, whether it's Apple or Google Contacts or what is the Outlook or any of those things, they have all kinds of different areas. They got notes you can put in. You can put people's birthdays and anniversaries and all kinds of things. And even as David mentioned, For those people that you have relationships on social media, you know, those things pop up, they change jobs, they do that. So one, have some time that you set aside, you know, whether it's once a week, twice a month, whatever it is that you're going to say for this next 15 minutes, 30 minutes, I'm just going to spend this time following up with people as it relates to relationships. Make notes about what somebody's into. And I'm going to close with this story. I met a guy when I was in Leadership Louisville years ago, and I was in the process of raising money to launch what ended up becoming Kentucky's first Black-owned television station. And he was a CPA. His name was Michael, and Michael Mountjoy. And so Michael and I both were in Leadership Louisville, and he knew I was working on raising money for this TV station. And so he started sending me, and this really dates this. He started faxing me information about, you know, raising money and, you know, broadcast TV and all of that kind of stuff. And probably seemed like every couple of weeks I get this fax from Michael. Hey, Hutch, hope all is well. And boom, he just put that fax out there. He probably had his secretary do it, you know. But, you know, the fact that he thought about me. So at that time, I was in the retail business. And when I launched a TV station, I decided that I was going to engage Michael's company, Carpenter and Mountjoy, to be our CPAs, you know. And he never asked me for business. But he made such an impression on me with the way he followed up and was sending me stuff that was of value to me. I'm saying, hell, if he's doing this and I'm not a client of his, imagine the kind of service and the focus I'm gonna get if I was a client of his. And so, you know, it really does make a difference. And it doesn't happen overnight, but if you plant enough of those seeds, and as Zig Ziglar says, I get what I want by helping as many people as I can get what they want. I think you'll be very successful in building your relationships and seeing the kinds of reciprocal opportunities that come, you know, out of being able to give. And when you do, it'll come back to you. So it's 7:21. We're going to take a 9-minute coffee, bathroom, water break. And we'll come right back at 7:30, and we'll start up with Desmond and Ricardo and talking about going global. This should be a very exciting session. Desmond is a 30-year professional in the global international business. He's probably been as many places on the globe as you could possibly think of. And right now, Ricardo, who is in Zimbabwe on a trade trip with the Atlanta Black Chambers. They have a Global Opportunities Committee that he's chairing, and they've been really busy expanding opportunities to do business across the globe. And so they'll be ready to talk to us. Matter of fact, looks like Ricardo just popped in. So feel free. I mean, we're going to stay on. We're not going to drop off or do anything. But if you need to stop and take a break for a minute, we'll get started at 7:30. Okay, well, welcome everybody. It's 7:31 to be exact, and we're going to get started back up. And our next panel, and we're really excited, particularly when you can get somebody who we want to give an extra kudo to, and we're going to give them a round of applause just for being here, just for showing up at 1:30 in the morning in Zimbabwe, Africa, to be with us today. And my good friend Ricardo Barris, I just want to thank him for making this extra effort to be here. And so let me share with you a little bit of Ricardo, who he is and what he does. And so he is a serial entrepreneur, investor, speaker, and coach. He founded the MI Group of companies in 2010 to help entrepreneurs who are challenged with technology and marketing to grow and scale their business. His group now includes MI Group USA, MI Group Colombia, and MI Group Bahamas, and focuses on software development, digital marketing, digital infrastructure, and SaaS products for non-technical businesses throughout the Caribbean, North, Central, and South America. The company is particularly interested in businesses looking to grow and scale locally and internationally using next-level digital marketing and technology solutions. He currently serves as chairman and CEO of the group. Through his companies, Ricardo has led successful projects with various organizations worth over $100 billion combined, including but not limited to government departments, retail banks, Fidelity, First Caribbean, hotels, Courtyard Marriott, Warwick, Ocean Clubs, quick service restaurants such as McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, Domino's, and universities such as Florida National University and Nova Southeastern, to name a few. He's chairman of the Atlanta Black Chambers Global Opportunities Committee, focusing on investments and trade and partnership with its over 600 members. He's a scholar of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Network of over 12,500 small businesses supported by Goldman Sachs. He's a SCORE mentor, a digital marketing coach, and with the BizHack Academy. He's also a member of the Sir Richard Branson Entrepreneurship Center of the Caribbean, Miramar Pembroke Pines Chamber of Commerce, Woodstock Business Club, and the ICABA World Network. Man, I don't know how you find time to do all of this, Ricardo, but I guess the fact that you can be on the other side of the pond, as they say, and up with us at 1:30 in the morning means that you're just working your butt off and you're very committed. And again, folks, let's give them a round of applause for being here. I mean, when we talk about 1:30 in the morning, most of us are going to be asleep at 1:30 in the morning. But Ricardo, thank you for being here, and the floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Hutch, for having me, and good evening, everyone. I actually have a flight to catch. I got to get up, get to my bus at 5 o'clock. So, if you think I got it bad, just wait for a few more hours because we got to get on that plane to Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, where we're headed right after this. So just really grateful to be here. Thanks for the introduction. I've been a lifestyle entrepreneur. It's been 23 years now since I've been just, building businesses. Some worked, some didn't, and I still kept going. And before you know it, the clock struck 23. And so it's kind of like a halftime in life now. And the next half, the next half of the life is going to be just going on to greater things. All those things that you see listed there, they did happen. But this is how I live my life, and this is how I spend it. But so grateful to just share a little bit about what I know with you, and answer any questions that you may have. So as Hutch says, I'm in Zimbabwe, in Harare, and I was in Durban, South Africa just last week, and then in Cape Town, South Africa the week before. And we actually, a group of us, about 11 of us from Atlanta, Georgia, made a decision to come out and connect with the community. And so I just kind of wanted to explain how that started, to give you some insight as to the idea of going global, to really expand your marketing and expand your business. So I moved to Atlanta about 4 years ago, and Hutch, all the credit to him. When I was in Miami and I told him I was in Atlanta, he said, I got to connect you with the president for the Atlanta Black Chamber, and connected with the chamber, and realized the chamber did not have an international sort of focus or component. And just kind of knowing my background, I was manufactured in Jamaica. My mom is Jamaican. My dad was Cuban. He passed away when I was a tot. But I ended up living in Colombia and the Bahamas, and just really spending a lot of time in a number of different jurisdictions. So when I got to Atlanta and realized that there were no, international focus for the chamber, I started to figure out, what can we do about that? Because my current business at the time, and still is today, we build software, we do digital marketing, and we've always tapped into talent right across the globe, from having an office in Colombia, having business in the region, doing business in the Bahamas, etc. And that's where we got a lot of our talent from. And so that allowed us to get that sort of international feel if you may, of how to do business in other jurisdiction and also with other culture. So it was ingrained in me from years ago as I started my business. So being in Atlanta and realizing that being a part of a chamber that has over 1,000 members did not have an international focus, I wanted to change that. So I created the Global Opportunities Committee for the chamber. And as they say, the rest is history. We did our first delegation to Cali, Colombia, for the first time in the city of Atlanta. 25 Black businesses was organized, put together to go on a trip to Cali, Colombia in South America. You can Google it. It's there in the history book. We communicated this to more than 5 million people around the globe about this history that was actually made. So the reason that happened is the very same subject you see on the screen, because going global. It's really a mindset. It's really something that you have to become culturally aligned with, because most people will ask, well, I've got a lot of things happening at home. Why would I need to look overseas? But those same folks sometimes forget that America is an immigrant country, and essentially everybody that's in America came from overseas for the most part. So why not look overseas? We do remittances, we do all kinds of stuff between different countries. So there's no reason that we can't do business with each other. I think it's probably easier sometimes to do business internationally than it is to even do business in your own hometown, simply because of those connections that exist, and the urge, if you may, from our international friends and colleagues to do business with America. Every time I step out of the US, brand USA is still revered, no matter where in the world you are. People still like the idea, and people still buy into the idea that USA, anything coming from USA is as good as it can get. And that's a huge opportunity, because even if it is not the case, you cannot tell someone from Zimbabwe that, you cannot tell someone from South Africa that, because the way that they look at the USA, regardless of what is actually happening, it is with the sense that they want to do business with anyone who's got, if you may, the American experience and the American dream, the access to the American dream, access to the American way of life, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever the business that you're in. There is an American seasoning, if you may, that you may have, that you can then extend to folks around the world, and they're buying it. And I'm always telling people, it's time for us as entrepreneurs to sell what people want to buy until they are ready to buy what we have to sell. And so in realizing that every time I set foot into an international community, people are always interested in buying this idea of the American brand, regardless of what you do and how you integrate what you do with the idea that they're buying really makes a difference and can actually help you to expand. And I'll give you a few examples of how I was able to do that. So the Global Opportunities Committee, which I chair, focuses on three things: trade, partnership, and investment for our members within the chamber. You don't need to be in Atlanta to be a part of the Atlanta Black Chamber, so everybody's welcome to be a part of it. So how did the idea came up to expand our marketing as a committee within the chamber into other territories? One of the things that I did in the chamber, in my committee, was I appointed regional leads from about 25 or so different jurisdictions around the world. And these are people that I knew just traveling and just doing business internationally. We have regional leads all over South America, Colombia, Panama, soon to be Brazil. And big shout out to Alex. I see you're on the call. Alex is from the deep south in Brazil, if you didn't know. But having these regional leads we've got regional leads in UK and Germany, on the African continent. They were very, very enthused about creating this global network of Black businesses more specifically, in terms of how we use that network to do business with each other. So this led to an instant connection for boots on the ground in these territories. So it became easy for the members of the Global Opportunities Committee to begin to connect and expand their business in those jurisdictions. Why? Because we had boots on the ground. And this was not just boots on the ground for us, it was boots on the ground for the partnerships that we actually have as well in these jurisdictions. So that's one thing that we ended up doing. And so when we came up with the idea that, you know, we must get on the plane, we must go to these jurisdictions, and we must press the flesh, because there's nothing better than pressing the flesh. It still works. It still works. So we made a decision to go out there, and the long short of it is 25 Black businesses was impacted simply by executing on those strategies, identifying who on the ground could be boots for us and how we could connect opportunities in trade, partnership, and investments for them. And so this became an enormous opportunity for those businesses. We went into Colombia. The moment we got there, we were essentially just greeted with a number of opportunities, any number of opportunities within, whether it's technology, agriculture, whether it's clothing, textile, and the businesses we took there, we essentially were matching them, which leads me to the other point of the matchmaking. Our Friends International like to do this idea of matchmaking. And so that's actually how I even got started with my business, by just looking around spaces where I want to do business with for events that I can actually attend. And there is like a maybe 90% chance that if you want to do business in, I don't know, Panama, you could Google Expo in Panama or matchmaking event in Panama, and chances are you'll find it. As a matter of fact, this month, Expo Commerce is actually happening in Panama, I think, as we speak. If it's not this month, it's probably next month. But the idea that you have all of these local events that is actually happening to connect businesses with each other, this is a good place to start. Most people don't know where to start, how to start. And so they say, this is difficult for me. I cannot envision me going into another country and doing business there. And I use the words of my advisors. Sometimes you've just got to get out of your own way, get on the plane, go there, and start connecting with people. So I started doing that by just identifying events. I knew that I wanted to do business in South America. So I looked at the events that were there and figure out maybe these are some spaces that I needed to be at. And there's always the chances are there's a US office or a US location for a lot of these countries that are also participating in these events. And it's about finding those spaces and communicating your interest in wanting to do business. So the business matchmaking, one takeaway that I'll leave with you is looking at business matchmaking events to help you to start connecting and building the relationships. I believe your initial session, your first session was building relationships. This is how you get started to expand into these global markets. So we did Colombia, we made history. We're still working actively on projects. Businesses are actually growing because they're able to connect with their counterparts in Colombia by simply making the decision that we need to be able to get in and go for ourselves, see what's happening. 6 months after that, we planned another delegation, and this time it was to go to Southern Africa. How did we get the idea to go to Southern Africa, and why did we even choose Southern Africa? Well, about a year ago, the ambassador for Zimbabwe and a group of CEOs from the CEO Africa Roundtable, that's actually another network that you can lean into if you're interested in doing business on the continent, came to Atlanta. And they came and wanted to see us as members of the chamber because they were on a mission to identify businesses that can help them to support their economic diplomacy. And so we received them, we talked about the different opportunities in Zim, and we made a commitment to them that while we appreciate you coming into Atlanta to talk to us about these different opportunities, whether they're in technology, they're in energy, mining, whether they're in service industry, whatever those conversations were, we ended up making a commitment to go to Zimbabwe ourselves to meet and see exactly what these opportunities are. There's, again, nothing like getting up and going. And even if you don't have a contract to go sign, if you don't have an agreement to go sign, and in our case, that wasn't the case. And I'll tell you why. But even if you don't have that today and you can go, I suggest you just get up and go. And getting up and go, the moment you enter into these jurisdictions, everything changes. But you may want to be more intentional. Maybe you want to find an event, like I said earlier, to go to and start connecting with people. Again, I'm mapping that intention with the ideology that happens outside of the world, that the American brand is still a revered brand. And so once you get in, you're from the US, you're from Miami, you're from wherever, and this is your business, people begin to open up and people begin to listen, because there's nothing better than the American experience. I was manufactured in Jamaica. I was not born in America. However, the experiences that I've actually had in doing business in America had given me the seasoning, if you may, that I needed to then be able to share those stories, work with American brands. And that was enough for people to then figure out, well, we want to be able to do business with you, because the experiences that you've had, the way that you've been able to absorb the, if you may, the American entrepreneurial culture, this is what we want to happen in our country. So the ambassador came to Atlanta. We talked about committing ourselves to going to Zimbabwe. But the other thing we did, in GOC, we appointed sector leaders to look at opportunities within the sectors that businesses can perform very well in. So we were presented with a number of projects from businesses in Zimbabwe to invite us to participate as partners, investors, or traders. And we're looking at all of these projects and we're delegating them accordingly. So we've got a real estate sector lead that gets all the real estate projects that are available in Zimbabwe for partnership or for opportunities to invest. We have folks in finance, sector leader for finance, sector leader for manufacturing, sector leader for technology, and so forth. So we began to look at all of these different opportunities in the form of a project. And this has begun to open up our eyes about the major landscape that happens in Zimbabwe and the opportunity that is there for us to lean into. When we look at these opportunities and we realize that we could participate as a body, we then begin our plan to go to Zimbabwe in March 2024. And this has been happening since, 6 months ago. Every 2 weeks, we've been meeting with the Zimbabweans, the private sector, discussing the projects, reviewing the projects, the needs, and so forth. And I can tell you proudly that someone who is in the tech sector, we've just signed an agreement tonight, which is the culmination. We've signed maybe about 12 different agreements with all of our delegates here, just from those conversations that we've been having within the last couple of months. We've signed 12 different agreements, and 3 of them I actually signed. One was signed with the CEO Africa Roundtable and the Atlanta Black Chamber. One was signed with my company and a telecom company here in Zimbabwe to help with ICT training, upskilling Zimbabweans to understand and learn new technologies and new way of things that's actually happening, keeping them in shape from a talent perspective. And the other that I signed was to build a data center here in Harare. And so for me, this is the genesis of how we expand into the market. If you're following me, you see where it all started. I look for events that I can get into. I try to build relationships from there. But this is This is essentially how it actually works. Now, if the ambassador and the CEO Africa from Africa Roundtable, if they didn't have the same sort of if they didn't have the same sort of what I would say intention like what we have in wanting to just get up and go, they made a decision. Let's get up and let's go to America. Let's go to Atlanta and let's connect with the community there and let's talk to them about what we want to be able to get done. And that was what changes everything. So I just shared with you two sides, two ways. People who are interested in coming to America to figure out how can you help them, and then you who may have an interest in a specific country, for you to go there and figure out how can you add value. So if you are interested in a country, pick the country, Panama, Costa Rica, just pick the country and understand why you want to do business there. And then you will identify an organization, go there and pay them a visit. And I promise you, you will be well received, you will be well accommodated, and you will be listened to. And if you can add value and change lives on the ground, this is how you begin to expand your market. On the flip side, if you know folks who are interested in coming to the US to pay you a visit as a business, whether it's an organization or a movement, if you may, be in position to receive them. I mentioned before I joined the chamber, we have folks here that are part of ICABA. I'm sure all of us are part of ICABA, but what I call micro communities, these are communities that will allow you to get involved. And the decision from an introduction to Melvin to a decision to create a global opportunities division within a community, within a micro community organization, to then leading a delegation in August for 25 Black-owned business, and then do it again with 11 Black-owned business on the other side of the world. And then now we are culminating just this leg of the trip with over 11 agreements signed across multiple businesses. This is how we do expansion. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. We have people here from the insurance industry. And by them just getting up and going with us and speaking out about how they can potentially help. There is almost no insurance industry here in Zimbabwe. But by virtue of having an American business sharing their experience and sharing how they've been able to help people get insured across multiple lines, it opened up the eyes of Zimbabweans to now want to partner and figure out how can we participate in that. So this is how we do the expansion. We came from South Africa and we spent 1 week in South Africa, Cape Town and Durban. And it was just all built out with itinerary, with activities from government officials to investment organizations to private sector organization, because they were very, very receptive and enthused. You are coming from the great United States, if you may, and the brand USA is revered. So they now really want to then be able to lean into that. And the other beautiful thing is you have the support on the ground. One of the things that we had benefited from was we notified the embassies and the consulates in the locations where we're going, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and in Zambia. We notified them, we're going to be doing this delegation. Here's our profile. Here are the businesses that are coming. Any support that you can give us that would actually be helpful. And they listened, they responded. And they helped to set up meetings, even though our reason for coming here was the relationship that we've been forging with Zimbabwe. We're already in the southern part of Africa. It took us 16 hours to get here, so we might as well just make some other stops. And that's what we decided to do. So the success leaves trails that you can actually follow into expansion. And I'll tell you that, the data center project here in Harare is a $6 million project. But we would never get an opportunity to have an eye on that project if it wasn't for those dots that we're connecting. And so my encouragement to those who want to expand globally, want to get into other markets, just get up and go. Just look at where do you want this to be. Africa, for example, is the next big thing. It's the next best thing. Africa is projected to grow. It is projected to be a leading economy in terms of the continent. Southern Africa is obviously, it's no exception. There's some amazing things that's actually happening here. So if there's an interest in Africa, in Southern Africa more specifically, it's an opportunity for you to then be able to go. So we've accomplished a number of success on our delegation. We were successfully able to get 2 of our members fully sponsored for an event. And that's the other point that I wanted to leave with you. So, you know, there's an event, it's a matchmaking event. We said, why shouldn't we not participate in this? Reached out. The guys know that we're coming from America. We're looking at products, we're looking to add value. And we were able to then negotiate 2 fully funded trip from this event for 2 of our members. They flew in, all paid, hotel paid, transportation, all of that stuff. And that's because, again, of the relationship. That's because of the initial outreach that was actually done. And the moment you do this for one, you then realize that you went to an event, you know, in Cape Town. We had 23 countries at the event that we attended in Cape Town. So that expanded your network immediately. One event expanded your network. We're meeting people from DRC, from Korea. We're meeting people from Dubai, and we're connecting with them. And what happens next? We're going to let them know how we can add value and how we could potentially partner and create some things in their space. And it may take some time, but you have to also follow up. You have to also push, and you have to also pursue. So those are some of the key things that I'd love for you to take away as you think about what's the next move should I do? How do I actually do this? You can start there. You can start research. The good thing is that a lot of these things have already been done for you. You know about the U.S. Commercial Services and the Department of Commerce, and they have a number of different programs that you can get on delegation. If you are not comfortable with doing this on your own, join a delegation. And a delegation is a part of a community. And if you join a community that is having some sort of international business, you can join that delegation. The U.S. Department of Commerce has a number of trade mission all the time. So that's also another way that you can get into the international space. And so we're here in Zimbabwe. We've got all of these exciting agreements and projects that we're launching and working on. We leave here this week to go to Zambia, and we're going to do the same thing there. And so one of the things that I've done as the entrepreneur that I am, I've organized. Yes, sir.
Get ready. You got the next speaker coming up. I just wanted
Okay.
Great stuff. And I was having a hard time trying to jump in, but we gotta get Desmond there. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's fine. My last thing I would say is, as I'm doing these trips, one of the things that I realized was that there's an opportunity to have, if you may, private moments with a lot of these businesses that are hungry for the experience of the value that can be added from an American perspective. So I've organized what I call private dinners with folks in these different jurisdictions. And my request is the company, they have to be doing a certain number, they have to have a certain number of employees, etc. And this is actually a paid dinner, by the way. So even if I came out of pocket to come into Southern Africa, I'm actually getting offset by these dinners that I'm actually doing in these different jurisdictions. And it's all about the relationship that I was able to forge. This is in the last 12 months, my 3rd time on the continent. And the idea that you could forge so many relationships within 12 months is magic. Why? Because people want to buy the idea that America is still the land of opportunity. It is still where they can actually achieve their dreams, but they might not be able to get there, but you can actually help them to create that bridge and make their lives a success. I'm going to pause here because I know we've got another speaker, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, thank you. And there are some questions here. So folks, hold on to your questions. Cynthia, Ricardo, and Vaughn. We already got somebody ready to come to Zimbabwe and catch up with you there. So that's fantastic. So I want to ask Ricardo to hold on because we will in about 15-20 minutes come back after Desmond, and then we're going to open up the Q&A. And so right now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, and he is Desmond Aluf. I'm sorry, something just popped up on my screen I wasn't doing. Okay. All right. So Desmond Alufahai, who is the Director of Office of Protocol and International Affairs for Miami-Dade Aviation Department, better known as the airport. And the Office of Protocol and International Affairs Division was created in 1988 to facilitate the movement of diplomats, dignitaries, elected officials, and VIPs through Miami International Airport and to support the airport's international programs and initiatives. MIA was the first, excuse me, airport in the U.S. and one of the few major airports in the world to offer a full array of protocol services, including a diplomatic lounge. Prior to joining, as a matter of fact, Mr. Lufahai leads the largest protocol office of any airport in the United States. Prior to joining the Miami-Dade Aviation Department, Desmond served as Senior International Trade Coordinator and Head of the International Trade Programs for Miami-Dade County's Economic Development and International Trade Agency from 2003 until joining the airport in 2019. He previously served as Executive Director and Head of Membership Services and Training for Junior Chamber International, as well as JCI's Director for Growth and Development for Africa and the Middle East from 1991 through 2002. He has worked as a leader in the international community for more than 30 years and continues to travel extensively throughout the world, conducting trade missions, workshops, organization field work, and essential professional development training. He has visited more than 90 countries and made notable contributions during his tenure as the JCI liaison to following organizations, including the United Nations agencies, World Health Organization, and the African Union. He was a delegate to the International Model United Nations in New York in 1991. And he obtained his Bachelor of Science from the University of Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria, and a Master of his MBA degree from Anna Maria in Paxton, Massachusetts. And so we have a pleasure of not only meeting with Ricardo and hearing from him, who is from an entrepreneurial standpoint and leading a trade mission, but now we're also going to hear from someone who has been an experienced professional in this space for over 30 years. And I think that by the time this is over, you should have a really good idea about the opportunities and how to go about getting started. Because remember, this is not just about the information and the opportunities, but it's also about the relationships. And so the relationship here is to be able to go back and now and not only take this information, but connect with the people here that allow us to be able to move forward. So without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to Desmond. And Desmond, it's all yours, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jerome, and thank you for inviting me and for the work that you have been doing for us now for decades. We're so proud of your leadership, and thank you for involving me in this very important work. As Jerome said, and by the way, thank you for that very kind introduction. I've been in the international trade space now for more than 30 years. I organize trade missions abroad, mainly to Asia and Africa, and all that our brother Ricardo said are very on point. So let me take it from the point of view of Ricardo asking us, why is it necessary for me to look outside of the US? And the brand USA, you're right, is very, very strong. Well, we all know that 90% of the population of this world is outside of the US because the US is 5% of the population of the world. So therein lies the opportunities for you. But every time I do these talks, I always like to remind our folks that in 1922, Marcus Garvey actually purchased the Black Star Line ship to improve trade with Africa, to do trade with Africa. So if by 2024 we are still scratching our heads as Americans as to why or how to do how to trade with Africa, then we're really too late, as Ricardo will tell you, as he's traveling through South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. The Europeans are already there, obviously, because of the colonial relationships, but also the Indians and the Chinese as well. So I always like to say that we as Americans, we are already getting to this dance a little bit late. Most of the big projects, those contracts are handed out to, are won by the Indians and the Chinese. So if you are really interested in doing business, whether it's in the Caribbean, Asia, or Africa, you really have to be engaged. And the opportunities are there. The reason I bring up Marcus Garvey is that even though he was a pioneer and actually purchased a ship to do direct trade, the fact should not be lost that Marcus Garvey never visited Africa. I bring this up to say that, yes, everything that Ricardo said is true. Get on the plane, go meet those customers one-on-one, but you don't have to travel abroad to do international trade. I really wanted to emphasize that, because as small businesses, there are many things that inhibit you from participating in international trade. So I don't want you to think that you have to come up with all this huge money, all this huge capital for you to actually go and engage in international trade. You can remain in the US and still participate in international trade. In my 30 years of doing this job, I have come to the conclusion that there are three types of businesses. The first group is those who have the ideas, they know what they're doing, they really would like to engage in international trade. The second group is the group that I call those who, take the leap. They do their feasibility studies, they do the leap, they take the leap and actually go and find out what's in it for them. The third group is what I call those who are fully invested, people like Ricardo, who are all in. So depending on where you are in your business and the category and the resources that you have, you can see which of the group you are in. But regardless of which group you are in, Ricardo is very right. Even the so-called folks who, quote unquote, hate us, almost always you will see that they send their children to the West to get education. They buy, our phones, they buy our cars, they buy our goods. So the brand USA is still very strong, simply because the goods and services they receive from most of the Asian countries are second class. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So for those of you who are in group one, there is a huge diaspora of Caribbeans, Africans, Asians in this country. And Ricardo is right. You just have to do your homework, go to an event. Speaking to a Nigerian American in the US, speaking to a Caribbean American in the US will give you a vast knowledge and insight as to the needs of those communities and those in the diaspora. There are a lot of binational chambers of commerce. Here in Miami, Florida, we have the Jamaican American Chamber of Commerce, the Dominican American Chamber of Commerce. So depending on which country you are focusing on, again, whether you seek out the diaspora population or the business aspect of the binational chambers of commerce. Ricardo already mentioned the consulates, the embassies. Nearly every country has an embassy in DC, and we're so lucky that in South Florida, we also have a large concentration of consulates as well. So you don't have to jump on the plane to go. These are resources for you. And platforms like this through Jerome and Ricardo just hit it so much. I don't know of any other country that invests so much and has put so much resources for SMEs. The United States bearing none, through the MBDAs, the Small Business Administration, and programs and grants all over the place. The United States, bearing none, is the #1 country that provides information and resources, literally holding you, holding you to, just walk along with all of the resources that's in place for you. So let me leave you, I know that time is running very short. Let me leave you with the 3 Ps, what I call the 3 Ps. If you are going to be engaged in international trade, global markets, these are the 3 Ps for you. Number 1, plan, plan, plan. Decide on which country, decide on which region. Many countries have different scenarios. Is it an English-speaking country? There are countries that don't speak the same language that we do. They don't have the same culture. They don't have the same laws. So do your research and plan, plan, plan. That's P number 1. P number 2, you have to have a lot of patience. When you're dealing with international trade, you have to have a lot of patience. There is time difference. There is currency risk. There are political risk. There are many issues, so don't think that you send them an email and then you are mad that they did not respond to your email when you wake up the next day because of cultural differences. I have a client now that I'm dealing with, let me just say Senegal, and everything was supposed to happen by February. Well, Senegal just postponed their presidential elections from February to December. So everything is dead now, everything is on hold. So there are so many things beyond your control. So you have to have a lot of patience. And the third and final P, persevere, persevere, persevere. You have to have perseverance. So plan, 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 have a lot of patience, and keep at it. Don't say because there was one mishap, there was one bump, you leave that, you let that opportunity go. No, persevere, pursue it, and in the final analysis, you'll be surprised that things will work out well. So that's my quick introduction for 15 minutes. I know that there is a Q&A, like I said. I'm so glad that Mr. Jerome reached out to me, and I'm here to answer any questions or any follow-up. Thank you. Brother Jerome, you are muted.
Yes, thank you, Desmond. Sometimes a few things can have big impact, and we kind of talked about that just a few minutes ago, but I'm going to go straight to, I know we've got some people who have some questions here. Ricardo, I know your hand is raised, so I'm going to remove the spotlight and put us in gallery view so we can see each other. And Ricardo, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say how much I appreciate you guys talking about international space. I've been there for the last 14 years in the Caribbean market, so I think I can relate. And I know the sacrifice that you guys are making is pretty huge. But I have a question for Ricardo. In the countries that you have recently visited, where do you see the most opportunity in the industry? And if so, is it in the private sector or is it in the public sector?
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. Good seeing you again. So the private sector is where the opportunities are. The way we look at it from my committee perspective, trade, investment, partnership, depending on the country that you're in, you will have opportunities that lean a lot more towards an investment side, which is these guys are private enterprise that they're looking for you to invest into their projects. They're looking for you to partner in the form of making a contribution to helping them to get their projects off the ground. So I give you a typical example. We have a number of real estate projects out here in Zimbabwe. Today, we did some site visits of over 3 or 4 different sites of real estate development. And the ask that has been put to us is investing in those to be able to have an ROI. And so we're seeing a lot of those sort of, if you may, weighted projects that are leaning more on the investment side of things. In terms of just which country does that, I think on the continent, you have basically a lot of the countries on the continent would want an American investor, an American partner to work with them to help them to extract some of the opportunities that they see. So I think real estate, technology, there are lots of infrastructure, if you may, infrastructure project, because, you know, one thing about the continent is that there are a number of things that still need development. And so the way I look at it is every sector, I'm always looking at the infrastructure, because we know that the infrastructure is a bedrock for everything that happens. And so I'm in tech. So if I can offer software development services here, I'm questioning where the infrastructure is. So we get to the infrastructure question, and then it's now a data center that has to be built, because we need to then be able to provide data services to commercial enterprises. So I think the private sector has a lot to offer, but you also have to keep in mind that if you are creative on whether your strategies and how you can do business with these countries, you could really win big, because not only you get a platform as an American brand, but you can use your creativity. A lot of things that you know, the little that you know is much for the private sector here, because they don't know about those kinds of stuff. And so those are the things that we actually lean into to then get. I was just appointed on an advisory board here, and I was just here a few days ago. And all of that came from 1 hour of conversation about just the things that I've learned in America as an entrepreneur. And these things are unheard of out here. And it's like, wait, what? Are you reading the news? Yes, they read the news. They just did not read the American news. And so, but you bring these kinds of stuff up. You are like so important, because it makes sense to them. And they're just wondering, how come they never knew about all of that? To say, well, this has been in the papers, this has been in the news all the time. So I think if you're creative, you can really lean into that. But to your question, it's the private sector. It's a lot of infrastructure stuff, but you can definitely get your way in. There's training and education. Oh my goodness. I think if all of you that's on this call can design a training program around your existing business, whatever it is, and you can package that and take that to the continent, God will bless you in so many ways that you will just don't have enough room for it, because everybody here is looking to be upskilled. Everybody here is looking to learn. Everybody here wants to get better from that perspective. That is exciting. And so if you can do that, figure out how you productize your service, figure out how you digitize it, and bring it out here. I think that would be an amazing accomplishment for you. You don't need all the countries on the continent. There are 54 of them. You just need one to be able to go in and impact, because you won't necessarily have room enough to be able to deliver on that. So those are some of the things that we're seeing on this side.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Vaughn, I know you had made a comment in the chat about wanting to attend the Zimbabwe trip, but they are already there. So they're coming back, but they will be going back to other trips. So, but just wanted to mention that to you. And if you have a question you want to ask Ricardo.
Oh no, I did connect with you. I sent you a request on LinkedIn, but yeah, I would love to talk with you offline with the services that I provide in compliance. So while I know the work culture is different, there's still a need to decrease and eliminate the amount of fatalities, injuries, and illnesses that are happening in the day-to-day scope of work that's being performed. So yeah, would definitely like to talk with you about offering that curriculum. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jerome.
Cynthia, I think you wanted to ask some question about your insurance business. 'Cause I know there was some mention about insurance, so I wasn't surprised to hear your, kind of picking that up, if you will.
Well, basically the thing I was wondering about, hi Ricardo, hi everyone, it was a great job. And I learned a lot, and I appreciate you guys, and really appreciate you, Hutch, as well, for bringing all this. But I actually do insurance, every type of insurance, and I'm appointed by a lot of huge companies, property, casualty, life, health. But I also wrote a book, The Notary Permit Runner. Do they have permits when they're out building all these different things? Do they have to have any kind of permitting and stuff like that as well?
It's a great question, Cynthia. I think I mean, I would have to defer that to my my colleague who is a specialist in the insurance space and could potentially answer that. But I doubt it that they do have that. I think there's a lot to learn when you connect with existing insurance companies on the ground. And you'll be surprised to know some of the things they do not have. But I think one way to explore more of that is be able to have us, we can introduce you, if you're looking just at Zimbabwe, for example, we can introduce you to a few of the folks who are actually in the business and is looking to probably launch business here, but also create partnership. The delegate that came has 109 insurance companies that they work with in America. And so this was the first time coming on the continent for them. This was the first time going into Zimbabwe for them. This was the first time them coming on a delegation. So those are some major first for someone who has a wide network in the U.S., Florida, Georgia. They're licensed in all these different states, but they've never been outside. And so I would love to introduce you to those kinds of folks so that you can tap into their knowledge and just the takeaways that they've had. We had these folks have their own breakaway meetings. So a lot of those conversations I may not have been into, but happy to introduce you nonetheless.
I would love to meet them, and thank you very much, because I'm actually appointed in 25 states.
Yes,
That's awesome.
The zoning and permitting is not like we have in the US, but different countries have varying degrees of zoning and permitting. Obviously, with countries like South Africa, almost what we have in the US, and then the poorer countries really have no zoning, and everybody builds everywhere. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you both.
Cynthia, it just reminded me of something. One of our new members who is from Nigeria lives in London. And did I connect you with Sheriff?
We met today, and
Okay.
we will be working on something together. And thank you for that connection, because we can help him.
Great. So just real quickly, Sheriff had some permitting issues in terms of export-import business that he was doing. And so we were able to connect him with Cynthia. And as you just heard, Cynthia is going to be able to assist him. So that's kind of the ICABA collaborative effort, at work, if you will. So who else got any other questions?
Yeah, Hutch, what I was gonna say was, for those, and I don't know about Africa, but I do know about Brazil being the, seventh most populous country with the 9th largest economy. I've had lots of business down there. And what you'll find interesting is that even though I'm a native and I speak the language, they don't care. They're not interested in the fact that I was born there. And as a matter of fact, when I connected with the universities down there, when we built the team a few years back before COVID, every talk that I went to give, I put the effort to do the presentation in Portuguese, and they said, hold up, we don't want you to do it in Portuguese. We want you to do it in English. And I said, what? I want to do it in Portuguese, man. That's like I was born here. They're like, we don't care. Our executives spent a lot of money to go to the US and get their MBA. We want you to do it in English. I said, man, this is crazy. Okay, so I'll do it in English, which felt very strange to me, So why am I telling you that story? I'm telling you that story because whether you're doing real estate, insurance, or anything else, my experience down there has been the language is not a barrier. I find myself, I was just there 3 months ago, doing business where you're in a room and everyone is speaking English. So don't let the language be a barrier. They want to do business with you. And there's lots of business to be done down there, whether it's Brazil, Colombia, Argentina. Well, not Argentina. They're having a tough time with their currency right now. They may change to US dollars, but either way, your money goes a long way. That's for sure. So
Very true. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I definitely support what Alex is saying. You know, people have spent an enormous amount of their resources to learn English, and they learned English because they want to do business with America. And so for the times when I've been in South America, I lived in Colombia. I mean, I speak Spanish, but people literally want you to speak English to them because they've gotten private tutoring, they've got to school, they've spent all the time that they had. Because in South America, if you have English, you can earn a little bit more money on your salary just because you speak English. And when you think about some of the bigger companies here in America that is hiring in South America, like the call centers or the BPO offices, etc., they will literally scoop you up if you're able to speak English. And so this is why a lot of these folks learn English. And so they want you to speak English to them. They hardly want you to communicate to them in their local language, because for them, that's not as valuable as speaking English, especially American English, because that's where they feel like there's a lot of benefit.
Yeah. Good to know. Guess you don't have to worry about the translating as you might have thought you would to do business abroad. Anyone else? Okay, well, we are at 8:29, and want to thank everybody for being here. I hope that you felt like this was time well spent. And
Powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Okay, good deal. Well, thank you to our speakers, Desmond, Ricardo. Ricardo, go get some sleep, my brother.
Sleep.
Oh, what you missed that plane in the morning.
Thank you for having me, and I hope this was helpful.
Well, I think it was, and I want to say to both to you and also to Desmond that this is not a one-off. We're going to be having these conversations ongoing, and I'm hoping, and one of the things I'll say to the people here, because maybe somebody wants to do it, but I want to get somebody in ICABA, because I've been trying to work with the Global Opportunities Committee, but it was just too many things on the plate. But I think that we've got some folks here that may feel like this is a good way for us to tie in and be a part of what's going on and share our ability to make some things happen. So thanks everybody for being here. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we want to see you on Saturday for our next session, where we've got leaders from the Goldman Sachs program, 10,000 Small Businesses, now being run by Maurice Gray. We've got John Gorgoda from the Jim Moran College of Entrepreneurship, and we also have George Gatson, excuse me, from the FAU's Small Business Development Center. And they all have really phenomenal programs. I know Ricardo's been through the Goldman Sachs program. I've been through the Jim Moran, and some of you may be familiar with the SBDC. But again, this is the part of our introducing you, connecting you to the resources, the connections, the relationships that you need to jumpstart your business success. So Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Levan Center. It'll be a hybrid event. We will be in person. And I see Vaughn says she was in a Goldman Sachs cohort number 19. So we'll be there from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And it'll be a hybrid event in person and also as well online. Thanks a lot again, Desmond and Ricardo. And thank you guys for showing up and being a part of today's event.
Level up your success with the ICABA World Network, where accomplished Black professionals and entrepreneurs have created a thriving global ecosystem built from valuable connections and impactful collaborations. Be a part of a trusted network that uplifts, inspires, and enhances your success. Join like-minded and leading Black professionals to foster meaningful relationships, unlock opportunities, and access the resources you need to thrive in your career, business, and life. Go to ICABAworldnetwork.com and join today.